the goal of a matralab explore session is always to learn about somebody's practice and to learn about it not in a finished state or in a kind of list of works that I've done, but in the moment of doing it, in the moment of understanding what goes on in somebody's practice. So Julian is here, Julian Klein is here for 10 days or something, yes, about 10 days at the matralab, working on a project around the Bodysuit score that has been developed at matralab for 4 years now. And he'll present, maybe he'll say a few words about the piece that he's trying to develop right now. But I think the main bulk of your talk, you can say a few words.
Okay.
But the main bulk of his talk will be about the research creation, artistic research in Europe and in Canada, and introduce a few tools and so on. So that's will become the main bulk of his talk. So welcome, Julian.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very glad to be back here. It's always a great pleasure to be here in this great city at this great institution and being a guest to work with the staff here and today. And it's really a challenge to come to the next step of the project. And I don't know if you hear about the project we are doing right now, so I will not talk too much about that. Actually, I didn't prepare to talk about it at all, so because we have the presentation on Sunday, where we show how far we got until now. So what we there actually do is a piece for two percussionists that who don't focus on the producing sounds, but focusing on playing a match against each other. So the goal is not to play the right sound in the right time, but to win the game. And we are reaching for results for Sunday, and I cannot tell you how far we get until then, but we will show you how far we got. So what I was asked by Sandeep to prepare for today is more to talk about the work we are doing in Germany, in Berlin actually, and there we are dealing with artistic research undertaken with the means of music and theater. That's what we are mostly occupied with. And artistic research from a general perspective has been a topic quite a while around Europe, but not in Germany yet. So there it is supposed to be inexistent, and but there are some people doing it, like ourselves, and therefore the first thing Sandeep asked me to talk about is what do we understand under artistic research, because it might differ from your concept of recherche création as here around, or something else undertaken elsewhere. So when I'm talking about this term artistic research, people tend to react, how can art be research? I don't understand that. I tend to reply that if we take this question, how can art be research, the other way around, and it becomes much more simple in the form of when does some research be able to become artistic, and then we have a time-wise difference, and we can tell when the artistic mode comes into the work of research. And to illustrate this notion or this understanding, I would like to invite you to a little experiment, if you like. And this experiment consists out of a first part, that is that I would invite you to have a little chat for 60 seconds with your neighbor, could be the left or one, or the behind, or in front, or right, doesn't matter, to talk about if and where in your own work is the research. And these 60 seconds are starting now.
60 seconds each or 60 seconds total?
60 seconds for all of us. And 10 are already over.
What's the question again?
Where is the research in your own work, if there is any?
Where is research in your own work?
Where's your
Right there.
Yeah, exactly. And research a little bit.
Study things before knowing whether it might be really crystal.
I write about it.
Research and what would be yeah, and the more research you do, the more experience I have. Research is like an experiment, scientific experiments that you're supposed to achieve some kind of musical.
Okay. But your professional musician, your research.
Okay, thank you.
Free I am.
Time's over.
Curiosity in general.
That's-
Maybe it's like kind of
You can continue this conversation afterwards, but now I would like to invite you to the second part of this experiment. That is that I like to invite you to repeat those 60 seconds as exactly as you can, and this is starting now.
What was the question again?
So what is it for you?
Where is the research in your own work?
Are you for me? I'm always trying to
No,
solve
I
problems
know.
for everybody, and answers to the problems that I'm always trying to solve, usually for an artistic job. But for me, I'm looking at crystals and microscopes and light, and I'm trying to achieve some kind of cosmetic result for scientific research. The research that there's the method almost. You know what your material is, and you do find that's how it's
Right. You're doing a PhD, makes sense.
That's right.
The more research you do at the beginning, I think.
What question
the
was
more
that?
easier than
Yes, and the more we
It's a general curiosity, which I think is other coming from
more freedom
the
I
question.
have.
To choose it. And sometimes the research
And
also
even
for
get rid of-
activities or
yeah,
well, that
yeah.
would be useful in some field. Sometimes it's it's like a scientific
Okay,
research,
thank you.
but I'm coming at it from an
The
artist.
second minute is over,
Sound, not music, sound.
and now comes the third part of our little experiment. I would like to invite you to switch places. So you have to do it by 3, but every couple can switch places. And to repeat this minute once again, but the text stays on the same chair.
So we switch seats, and then
You
we
switch seats, and get the text of your partner.
we change each other's
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah.
The negative dinner.
So you have to do it by 3. Please.
Oh, I see. Change partners.
Oh, we're changing partners,
Okay, and these 60 seconds are starting now.
So
What
was it the other way around? What motivates you?
Oh, I'm generally trying to solve
It's
problems.
where is the research in your own work?
So,
10 hours already.
very
interesting.
do research about extensive
And so what motivates me in my research is
Before
looking at live crystals.
I asked him if they're professional musicians.
Oh, well, I've been working on
So do the research professor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
understand.
But yeah, he said he was doing more and everything.
So what motivates you?
And
Artistic
how
research
much
or
can we
the
do
research?
research?
Maybe like feel free or
I think it's
composing
more,
Okay, thank you for that.
Really good.
Yeah, thank you. So,
We'll see.
you can switch back if you like, or stay where you are.
Do you like where you are?
Now let's look on what kind of experiences we could have made during the last 5 minutes. So, in the first place, I asked you, or I invited you to perform a task, to talk to your neighbor about a certain topic. So you were focusing your neighbor and performing this task. And in the next round, I invited you to play this very minute once again. So there were two layers of your focus, probably. Yeah, if you reach the goal to perform it very, very exactly. That is the minute that went before, and then the second minute had the second layer where you had another focus on performing not only the task but performing it right. So to repeat what has been done before. You had the layer of the first minute and the layer of the second minute. So reality was split up in two layers of reality, so to speak. And in the third round, I asked you to act like your partner. So it was not anymore you yourself performing, but acting as if being someone else. So you represented someone. And we could also have in this series another column that is when you entered this room, you did already do anything. Yeah, you chose a chair, you sat down, and you watched Sandeep and me talking. So, but there was no focus, and that you are doing it right away in this moment, choosing a chair, sitting down, and watching. So there is a gain of focus through this series, and that is that in the first place, when you entered the room, you were not playing, and in the end, you were acting. That is, playing to be or pretending to be someone else. And these actions also resemble modes of perception, if you like. So we have the mere present, and in focusing on something, it gains a little more presence, and then you presented what you just did before. It's the mode of presentation, and of course, you can guess what comes last is the mode of representation. Yeah? You were someone else that you are not yourself. And we can also add some other domains that work alike. So we have a continuum of perception where you gain something, and what you are gaining is redundancy. So the more you repeated this 60 seconds, the more meaning it gained. When you did it the first time, you didn't bother of saying something this way or that way, but the second time, you could make a mistake because the repetition could go wrong. That was not the case in the first part. And in the last round, you could even have misunderstood what your partner have said before and repeated it the wrong way. So the chance of making mistakes is increased through this redundancy. And that is very useful to speak also about perceptive modes in our perception, like that there is a sphere of what we could call the aesthetic mode. That is that the perception itself comes into focus, that you are aware of perceiving something, which is not the case in the present part of the perception. And so the next mode could be called the artistic mode, because reality seems to be split up in several realities. So in my mother tongue German, I like to differentiate between reality, which Realität, which translates into reality, and Wirklichkeit, which seems to happen to also translate into reality, but it means something else. It means something that has a Wirkung, that has an effect. Yeah? So reality, Realität, consists out of several Wirklichkeiten, that several layers of reality where effects can take place. And that's what is the case in the artistic mode. And of course, the last thing is, speaking of representation, the semiotic mode, where you can differentiate between the signifier and the significant, of course. You all know this stuff, probably better than me, but what I would like to point at is that there is a mode of perception where reality is split up in different reality layers, and that is the artistic mode. And of course, the realm of art is bigger, so we have also aesthetic modes and semiotic modes within the arts as a whole endeavor, but the core competence of the arts is of course the artistic mode. So, and why did I do this little X-course? Because then I am able to explain what might be artistic research. Because we have a noun of this term, meaning research, that could be or is often understood as a quest for new knowledge. Whether it's systematic or not, I would like discuss at another place, but the new knowledge is what it is aimed for. If you gain it or not, doesn't so much matter that that the quest for it. So there is a motivation to gain new knowledge. And there is an adjective of this term, artistic, and that is saying how do you like to gain the knowledge, and that means in or with the artistic perceptive mode. And then things become more easy because now you have a practice that is to research, and you have a method how to undertake the research that is using the artistic mode. And that's as simple as it is, how we understand this term of artistic research. Of course, there's more to say about that, and if you like to have a more deep diagnosis of the artistic mode, you can go to our website, and there I have some publications where it is also in a written mode described. So that's the theoretical or concept-wise background of what we do. And now I would like to present you some examples of our work that you are able to understand how we undertake this and in which ways our projects work. So, who are we? We are the Institute for Artistic Research, and we are not part of a university and not placed at a university, but we are placed at a theater. So there is a music and theater group originally. Nowadays we are more an interdisciplinary group together with scientists and scholars and artists called A Rose Is. And we founded together with a theater, Radialsystem 5 in Berlin, and members of the Young Academy, as a national academy for young scholars and scientists and artists in Germany. This institute to work together, to work interdisciplinarily. And to illustrate this with some brief examples, the first example I brought with me has been shown already here, I think 2 or 3 times, so you might got along with it. It's called Brain Study, Installation for Interconnected Brain Players. What we did is we trained musicians to manipulate their own brain waves with a neurofeedback on headphones. And then we built out of the ensemble a model of a human brain consisting out of some representations of parts of the brain that contribute to the auditive and visual perception. And then we placed them in a circular room below the stage of Haus der Berliner Festspiele, like in a sculpt. So they are placed anatomically, and you could walk around this space to watch the system proceed. And as they were interconnected together as an ensemble, they worked as a model, as a human brain, in that sense that there was an emergent competence to process perception. And for those of you who didn't have the chance to listen to it yet, I have a little excerpt of rehearsal footage. Can we have the sound? Okay, there you go. for a first impression. Yeah. Last time I made an hour-long talk about this project alone, so if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. But it should only be just an example of what we are doing, what stuff we are doing there. So do you have questions, or should I proceed to the next? Yeah.
What was the soundtrack, please?
It was 3 layers, a pure EEG sonification, and then a highlighting of the brain activity. So it means the spectrum of the EEG was supported. And the 3rd layer was the processing of the actual perception of the brain model.
I did not understand what you said.
Yeah. So we made a sonification of an EEG. They had electrodes on their heads, and with this they trained to manipulate their brain waves that they can play with it like a musical instrument. And then we interconnected them in the way a brain works. So they became a brain model altogether, a model of the human brain. And that is what the sound results then are. So there is the layer of the pure EEG and like a contrast that you can detect the rhythms of the spectrum better because EEG is very low. And the 3rd layer is the processing of the system of its own perception as a model. So we started it as an embryo, like empty, and then during the festival the model gained more and more memories and reactions and emotions and so on. So when you had the chance to come back the other day, you would have been able to watch it grow. Yeah, the memory is growing of the model, and some other things going on, of course. And the last day we had them sleeping overnight. So and we opened overnight the installation, and there the computer interpreted the measurements of the sleeping performers as the dream of the system. Okay, next one is the art of collecting. It was a taxonomic parkour through the research collections of the Natural History Museum in Berlin. This is the building, and inside there is, of course, an exhibition, but there are also the research collections that which are not open to public, and there are lots of dead bodies and alcohol placed like in Humboldt's time. So it's a very special place. And what we did is we made interviews and talks with the biologists working there. They are concerned with taxonomy, that is the biological discipline concerned with the naming and identification of species, of new species, of course. And they are doing it for 300 years now, and they reached between, or what you guess, how much of the living species are known yet after 300 years of research?
25%?
25?
10?
If you include microbiology, it's much less.
Yeah.
3%.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, about 2 to 4%. It's the estimation. Yeah. So, and what I learned from them is that this is the largest art project ever undertaken. Because when you ask the biologists what is a species, you get an answer different depending on what group they are working. Yeah? Because nature does not behave like our definitions. And so this project of naming species is not so much about nature. It's much more about how we look on nature and how we understand nature. So it's the human gaze on nature that is investigated, and that's very interesting because nature doesn't respond accordingly, of course. It does it the way it wants. in the end, we had a parkour that was a performance in 64 spaces in the research collections in parallel. And so the first thing for the audience was to find a way through this jungle of names. And therefore we had a menu, and you could, we had several acts. This is the first act. And in every act you had the chance to pick one or two of those guided tours. And because we made a taxonomic performance, these guided tours were named taxis. And we had a taxi stand where they started, and they looked like this. So these young ladies guided the people through the collections, and every tour was dedicated to a certain genus. And every animal genus was mirrored by an artistic genre. So in the fish hall we had an ensemble piece, a chamber concert with a solo water percussion. In the mammal hall we had an art installation with fur. We had literature. We had a cooking studio with you could taste there cooked worms. And we also did active taxonomy. So this is the holotypus of a new species detected in the museum called Homo taxomaniae. And we also published it as a real biological publication. So until that day, or since that day until now, there is a second recent human species living on the planet, until the biologists find out that that is perhaps only an underspecies of Homo sapiens, but they did not so until now. We had theater, and in the end, in the basement, there was a rock concert with songs with texts taken from the interviews of the biologists. And we also had a catalog, of course, and a website where you can look up some video footage of the piece. It's in German though, but you might have an impression what we did there. Another example is a larger project, we call it Evolution, the evolution of emotion, undertaken with several partners. And I have two examples out of several ones in the frame and the range of this project. The first was Do Birds Tango. It was a collaboration with a neuro and behavioral biology institute of the Free University Berlin. And as every discipline has like a black hole in its middle, also behavioral biology has one question that is forbidden, that is that you better not touch as a biologist. That is, what is the inner experience of the animals? And so they investigated zebra finches and zebra finch songs. And what you are not allowed to tell is what you might ask is, when we are talking about bird song, we say bird song. So they seem to sing. And an interesting question to us musicians was, do the birds experience it the same way? So do they think they sing when they sing? Or do they think of anything else? And this is a kind of a question a biologist does not address, because you cannot say anything reasonable about it. Or perhaps you could when you collaborate with artists, because they are allowed to ask those kinds of questions. So what we did is we hand-raised zebra finch males, little ones, and trained them with musical instruments to sing their own song. So there have been experiments with adopting zebra finch males by canary parents, for example. And what they then do is that they stop singing it out at all, because they don't learn anything. what they normally learn is from their fathers how to sing the best, because that's important. In the zebrafinch world, there is the male who are singing, and the female chose the best mate. So it's really crucial for you as a young male to sing really good, because otherwise you won't get a female. And so we taught the little males from the musical instrument their own language or song, if you like, yeah? And asked then the females if we did it the right way. So that's how we addressed the question whether the musicians that trained on their own instrument and practiced to imitate what we as humans detect from the birdsong as being meaningful, if that what we hear is also what the female zebrafinches are listening to, if there is any relationship. And it was. And in the end we had a little bird orchestra, every bird trained by a different instrument, and we were also of the opinion that we could detect which one comes from which instrument. And so we had them on stage playing music together with them, and in the end we made also something for the females, because we thought it would be good to have also some toy for them, because there is one thing in the zebrafinch world that may also be the same in the human world. With the males, there's something special, because none of them is perfect. So what we then provided to the female zebrafinches was a composing tool, a synthesizer, that they were able to compose the song of their dreams, so the ideal male that they are reaching for. And then in the end we also asked them whether they have the real existent sex mate or prefer the synthetic own composed song, and they preferred the synthetic one. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's also a parallel to the human world, but would be worth a test perhaps. Another project was called Aesthetic Modulation of Affective Valence. That's a so complicated title because it was invented by a psychologist. But the thing we investigated is a very simple one. It's our joy in bad emotions. So why do we listen to sad music? Why do we enjoy going to horror films or watching disgusting art installations in galleries, something like that. Yeah? So bad emotions are very attractive. And for the psychologists, this is a real problem, because they used to think in categories like good or bad, or plus or minus, or positive or negative. But if the negative is good, then there seemed to be a mismatch. And we as artists, we said, where's the problem? So every time you play a Shakespeare play, or read a novel, or listen to music, or whatever, yeah, every time you are encountering art, you enjoy bad emotions. So where's the problem? And then we had one emotion where we were not decided, and that was anger. So is there a possibility to enjoy your own anger? So it's not about letting it out, yeah, but enjoying the feeling of anger. Because in our working group there were different opinions, and then we decided to make just an experiment to find it out. So, and we invited people to a theater performance to get very, very angry. So they did not know before that they will get angry, but they did. And then we, in an interview afterwards, we asked them if they were able to enjoy this. And then we published the results, of course, yeah, and the answer is, it depends. It depends on what? you won't be astonished that the crucial thing is the artistic mode of perception. So when you are able to stand a step beside yourself, watching yourself being angry from outside and having this split of reality layers, then you are able to enjoy your own anger. When you are not able to get into this perceptive mode, it's nearly impossible. And that's what we found out in this experiment. Not so much astonishing, but psychology didn't look at it like this until we made this proposition. So that was more a project to help others, and the next project was to produce proper art, so to speak. It is a project we play it in Zurich now, but it was produced in Deutsches Theater Berlin, and it was a biography of his grandfather. So this is the actor Matthias Neukirch, and his grandfather was called Hans Schleif. He was a really well-known archaeologist back in the 30s and 40s, and he was also a member of the SS and shot himself in 1945. So the grandson has some questions left, of course. And what we do in the theater performance is to invite the audience to go on the trace, searching for what he has done, what he has known, and why he behaved like he behaved. And we found out really astonishing things. So in the beginning of his career, he was not at all a Nazi, and in the end he contributed to some of the baddest things that went on in the war times in Germany, and that on a very high level of the hierarchy in the Nazi system. And that was very astonishing, very surprising for us, because no one knew it until then. So we found it out, and we invite the audience in the evening when we're performing this piece to go on the how do you say, Reise? Trip, on the trip, to the question, not so much about what this person was, but what does the grandson with this heritage, and what do we all do now with this heritage all together, and what kind of questions might our grandchildren ask one day? Where are our blind spots, and what do we do today what is questionable?
Can you say what the man did that was so bad?
Yeah, he was then organizing the weapon industry of Germany. So they took all airplane construction and bomb construction and missile construction underground, and built underground concentration camps where people were to build plants, underground plants, and to maintain the plants by putting together airplane parts and making bombs and making missiles and making the large rocket, the V2. So that was what he organized then in his last 2 years. Yeah. Also a publication came out of this project, because people tend to ask, where are your sources? And this is like the footnote apparatus to the piece.
What is that picture on the cover?
That's another part. This is a yearbook of archaeology of the German Archaeological Institute, and so there is another composition in the book where they took the picture from. It has nothing to do with us.
Is that project related to the Anger Project?
No.
Okay. I had the impression that you were taking the insights that you derived from the Anger Project and turned it into proper art in this project.
No.
I
No.
misunderstood.
There is no connection.
Okay.
also there is no connection to the next one, and that will be my last example before I come to the next point. I was part of a research group called Other Minds. We were concerned with the question, how can we imagine the perspective of others? So how do we dive into other minds, of the minds of others? And one of the projects we did as a group was to deal with the question of infamous perspectives. So what are those? Those are perspectives that are infamous in the sense of that you don't like them, that you don't want to talk about them, that you don't want to have to do anything with them. But you still are able to take over the perspective of this infamous Gegenüber.
Other.
And this infamous other, yeah. And this project consisted out of a theater experiment. It was an installation and a symposium where we invited other professionals that have to deal with infamous perspectives in one or the other way, in order to have an exchange, how to do it and how important it is, and how important it is to also step out of the perspective again. So that's also at times a different task, of course, for several professions. And this is how the theater installation looked like. What we did was we invited the visitors to come in couples, 2 by 2, a man and a woman, to read a theater text that was based on a trial against a couple that murdered their own children. So they sat on chairs in front of a screen with a microphone and a bell. The bell was to stop their experiment immediately. And the only task they had to do was to read loud the text that was presented on the screen into the microphone, together with a third voice that was a pre-produced actor's voice reading all of the other parts of the trial, so the judge and the attorneys and so on. And then afterwards, and on the other side there was sitting your partner reading the other part, so a man and a woman reading the parts of the accusants. And afterwards we had talks and interviews with our visitors, asking them whether they were able to take over this perspective and what this made with them, what the text made with them, and what this situation made out of it. And we got the whole range of answers. So there were people that were saying, oh, that was the most intense artistic experience I ever had. And there were also people that were disappointed from the text because they were used to so drastic other things, films and texts and so on, that this seemed to be more harmless to them. And out of this experiment, we had like 120 visitors. We made a video installation that was placed in the foyer of the symposium, and we made a theater performance out of it. And the first part of the performance consisted out of this self-experiment where we invited 2 guests to perform this experiment on stage in front of an audience, having the interview afterwards, and then also a lecture from what we got from the other visitors that were placed in the foyer. And and this was also shown in the program of the symposium, contributing to the question of, are we allowed to enter these perspectives? Is it in a way attractive to do this? Is it also somehow enjoyable, or is it even a societal duty for us to deal with those perspectives and therefore try to understand them by taking them over at times and trying to not pushing them so far apart that we say, oh, they are monsters, they don't have to do anything with us, we are safe, there is nothing we could share. Those kinds of questions were then discussed in the symposium and documented in a little book.
Were the people who did it on stage, was it for the first time?
Yeah. They did not know what they are going to read. They only knew the circumstance that they are about to read a trial of this couple that murdered their children, but they didn't know the text before. No one knew the text before who came to the installation. Yeah, so there might be even more of your interest, and so I invite you to go to our website. So, lots of stuff. What I now prepared is to briefly present to you the Journal for Artistic Research and our situation in Germany. I don't know if that is of interest or if we should go into discussion right away. I don't know.
I think the journal would be interesting.
The journal would be interesting? Okay. So I skip the German situation and go to the journal.
I don't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to ask if you're going to talk any more about your models for artistic research and those particular projects.
In what respect?
Well, at the beginning you presented the theoretical
Yeah.
framework for your
Yeah.
concept of artistic
And-
research, and you presented a bunch of projects.
Yeah.
But I would like to hear more about the connections between them, not necessarily now, but if there's.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could also say as a couple of sentences to where the artistic mode is placed in which project or something like that. So that my idea of the concept of artistic research is that we should get rid of this major categories. Yeah? Here the arts, there the science, or here the knowledge, there the aesthetic experience, because it's not that way in my perspective. They are mixed, and from time to time the artistic mode can be very present or only be at the edge of the table or even disappearing, and so it's more a dynamic process, and you can describe much and with much more precision when you ask which perceptive mode is active when during the process, instead of saying this has to fit in preconditioned categories. That is art because this and that criteria, and this is research because of this and that criteria. It can be both at the same time. It might be oscillating between several stages, and it also might have several phases where things are more or less important. So not everything we do in the end is published in the realm, in the domain of the arts. Not everything we undertake is starting with an artistic motivation. Not everything we undertake is using the artistic mode right away. So, but what is counting as being artistic is that you have this in one opportunity, in one time, you have this splitting up in different realities, and that what is the common thing of what we do, and that is and we do it as theater makers, so we invite people to experience it like bodily in a moment, in a spot, and being present. That might be different with music or literature or film, but that's how we do it in theater, of course, to invite people to spaces, providing a room and a mental space for making experiences that are not possible outside of the frame, or might be not. Okay. So then I go to the journal. Back in 2010, there was the event of the foundation of the International Society for Artistic Research. It was in Bern, in Switzerland, actually. And this, the first aim, or the only goal back in those times, was to publish a proper journal for artistic research. And we had some institutes being founding members then, and also individual artists, and they all together founded then the Journal for Artistic Research. And this is an online space where you can have a publication of peer-reviewed articles concerned with artistic research, and the articles are online and multimedia, so you have the chance to integrate whatever online media is feasible. What we are still struggling with is the idea of having also live reviews, so there might be parts of artistic research that cannot be documented online. You have to go there and experience it right in the place, and we don't cover this kind of research for now, but we are longing for this, and we are also longing for different languages other than English, but we are not there yet. And this journal has an editorial team, and I'm happy to be the person responsible for the peer reviewers, so I'm the contact person for the reviewers, and I'm choosing them and ensuring that everything is covered that need to be covered to assess and review a certain submission. And this is a real challenging but also very rewarding task, because I'm in touch with lots of interesting people. These are only those reviewers from the past that allowed us to announce their names on our website, so there are more that opted to remain anonymous. And the good news of it is that this is without charge for both sides, for the authors and for the readers. So it's totally free, and you might go to the website that is underneath the journal. It's called Research Catalog, and this is an online tool where you also can self-publish things that then go online, but they are not reviewed. But you can also submit to certain journals, like the JAR. So if you go there and just join the catalog by register for an account, then I would be happy to help you to get something. No? Something like this. So when I go to my account, then you can here create a new exposition where you can have a thumbnail for and a title and an abstract. And then you get an editor where you can have objects like texts, or images, audio, video, a slideshow where you can place an audio track underneath some slides or images, PDF files for download of your readers, synchronous playback of some video and audio, and having some other tools. And you also can have pure HTML if you like. You can program yourself the intestines of your site. And then you have here the preview. This is how it will look. So in the first place you have an empty page, but what I'd like to show you is that you will get here a stable link to your publication. So as soon as I press publish, you will get a DOI number for your publication, and so it will be a stable link. And here is the abstract announce. You have the navigation of the site, and you can have a table of contents when you need more than one page of your contribution. So that is what you get when you enter this catalog. Yeah, and my idea was either to have more discussions with you now, or if you have your computers ready, I could also help you to take the first step into this universe. Yeah? But anyway, yeah.
Is there a way
Happy
to search what is already there in the catalog?
Of course, yeah.
Can you?
You have a search field here.
Okay, you go to researchcatalog.net and there you can.
Yeah, you can be.
Search by keyword for things, projects that people.
Yeah, you have also an advanced search, so you can have keyword search here. Yeah, you can search for authors, full text search. You can search for other users that work on a certain topic. Yeah, like searching for someone who works on.
Psychology.
I don't know. Bodysuit or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if it. So, and you get those colleagues.
Cool.
Put infamy. Search for infamy. Infamy. As in infamous.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No criteria.
I was hoping my photo would come up.
Well, would there not be any criteria or any photos? What's going on?
I don't know, there's no publication in the catalog yet. So.
But the bodysuit thing showed all kinds of stuff that weren't really bodysuits.
Yeah, I mean, as long as no one publishes something upon this topic there, then it will stay like that. Okay. Yeah. Then at first I'd like to thank you for your attention, and then I'm happy to answer further questions.
The journal,
Yeah.
so it's associated with the institute, yes?
No, with the society.
It's
The institute is one member of the society, and the society publishes the journal.
Got it, okay.
These are the others. We are there beside the
Oh,
MIT.
yes, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
I'd like you to define two terms in a nutshell. The aesthetic mode and the artistic mode.
Yeah. The aesthetic mode is concerned with the perception itself.
For example.
For example, every time when you perceive how the things sound, how they look, how they feel, then you enter the aesthetic mode.
An example.
An example, if I would have a glass of water here, I can just have it, have it and drink it and put it back.
That's
Yeah?
aesthetic?
That's would be the transparent mode. But if I feel the temperature of the water, if I feel the weight of the glass, if I look at how light is broken through the water, then I enter the aesthetic mode.
And then the artistic mode.
The artistic mode would be that it becomes a presentation, that I know that this water was placed for me there, or that it means that I'm expected to say anything because I'm the one to present something, or if the glass becomes a role or a function or a specific meaning, then that is the artistic mode. So you can think of it as being in a frame and looking at it from outside the frame. You step with one foot in the frame and leaving the other outside. That's the artistic mode. To think of the world how it could be.
Or used to be.
Yeah, or used to be and could change or something, yeah.
There's a removal, a certain removal that's integral to the artistic mode, the 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Right. Yeah.
Some kind of distancing.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the semiotic mode would be the stage where I know what it is, and there's no doubt about that anymore. There's one stable meaning of it, and that's it. That's all I have.
Is it possible to have a stable meaning?
Sure. If you don't think further, then there is a stable meaning, yeah? You can ask, why is the J a J and the A, and it's not turned the other way around? You didn't think of it until I pointed to it now, right? So you had the semiotic mode, but when you doubt it, then you enter the artistic mode again. You go back to having the unstable meaning. Yeah? You still see it, but you are questioning it. That's artistic.
This reminds me a lot of Peirce's concept of firstness, secondness, and thirdness.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if this registers.
I don't know.
Yeah, Charles Sanders Peirce was an American semiotician.
Yeah, I know
in
him.
the early
but I
20th
don't know
century,
what
and this is sort of the basis for his whole semiotic theory, this idea of firstness, of absolute presence, and secondness, an index of something, a relationship to something on another order, and thirdness involves degrees of self-reference. And this plays out in a huge complex system which I don't really understand in its entirety, but the fact that you've used these three modes so explicitly, and they seem to contain, the issue of self-reference so specifically, it seems like it fits hand in glove with that concept.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Mm.
As if I understood it right, then the redundancy of this Peircean system is already so filled with preconditions that you immediately can enter the semiotic mode by dealing with it. So it wouldn't mean that you can every time when you have a signifier and a significant, you can doubt and can go a step out of the system, but as long as you just accept it, then you are already in.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to steer the conversation into semiotics.
Yeah.
We probably have better stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
It's I just wanted to throw that out there, and I think
Yeah.
that Peirce's theory is actually much more adaptable to the way you're thinking than the French version,
Mm-hmm.
which is very much based on this duality between the signifier and the signified. For
Yeah.
Peirce, it's not so much about semiotics on the level of representation, but on the level of causes and effects. And the idea of firstness is much more about, what you would call as being a non-semiotic kind of reality. But
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
forget about that for a moment.
Okay.
I was thinking about, because you have explained the artistic research concept, what precisely would be the difference to research creation as it's practiced here. And I think the main difference is not what is being done, but it's more because research creation is a kind of established practice has funding structures and so on, that the definition of what can be declared research creation is different. Because you're not in this definitory problem to define what it is, but you just need to declare what you consider artistic research. And the system accepts, or the funding system accepts several different things covered by your wonderful table of chart of what can be done. So, for example, a project, you defined artistic research as research being done with the methodologies of art, of the artistic. Right? That's kind of how you defined it, and that is a totally valid definition that's been used in definitions of what artistic research is, meaning that you have several research methodologies that have been established: quantitative research, qualitative research, and so on, of different kinds. And artistic research is one more of these methodologies in research that can be used. But that's one of the definitions of research creation. But research creation also accepts projects where artists don't do any research, in the sense that they don't interact with the researchers, and the researchers don't engage with the art at all, but both ask similar questions and then never talk to each other, and then they publish the things together. That would be acceptable as artistic research as research creation in the funding structure. So they could meet in the beginning and say what. So like your question about the infamous discoveries, it could be something that the infamous others. So that could be the subject of a talk in the beginning, of a conversation in the beginning. Then they never talk to each other again, and just do their stuff, focused on that question. And at the end, they come back together and present it side by side, which is not strictly artistic research in your definition, because no one has had the intention to create knowledge through artistic means in either of these two branches of the tree. The idea is that that in the end they would come together, and that the insights would happen at the second meeting.
I'm not sure. So when you say there are researchers, what do they research?
Well, whatever the topic
Yeah,
is,
but
that is
as
agreed
long
on.
as they research, they have the motivation for knowledge, isn't it?
Yes, the researchers.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the artist may go off and do
Yeah, but
an
that's
artistic
fine.
work in a traditional way,
That's
without
fine as
any
well.
without any communication with the
Yeah,
with the
that's fine as
researchers.
well with this concept. So whenever the artistic mode is used for the means of knowledge, then it's artistic research. Whether it's undertaken by a scientist or an artist or someone who has no discipline at all, it doesn't matter.
But then is all artist practice artist research?
No.
Okay.
So that's what I meant. The artist could go on and write a symphony,
Yeah.
saying, "I was inspired by this conversation with the scientists, and that gave me and during this conversation I had an idea for a melody, and I'm going to write a symphony based on this melody."
Yeah.
And that would be in the funding context that we have. If there is this other branch going on at the same time, where say the scientists investigate something that they talked about at a symposium, and they thought the artist was like a little crazy person there and did some crazy stuff. And they never even think about what the artist contributed. Right? They didn't look at this artist's contribution as research. But if both branches work in the same time frame under the roof of the same project, then you can get the project funded. It would not be probably, the idea would be that at the end they come together and they co-publish parallel. Maybe they don't even meet. So you have an end product where you have a set of articles and a symphony, for example. And that would be seen as a possible outcome of an artistic research project. So it's more that they share the same question than that they share any part. So they share the same question at the beginning, and they share the same they share an outcome platform.
Yeah.
But in between there's no.
Yeah, but that's fine.
That's fine. That's also fine in
Yeah,
your
of course.
concept.
Of course, because you have.
So then there's no difference. Then
Yeah.
Because you have the opportunity in the end to have the symphony along with some other texts or whatever or images, and then at least the artistic mode will be encountered by the recipients of this publication.
Okay.
Yeah? So then when things come together, questioning on top of each other, then you have the artistic mode. So that will be fine. I don't see a problem.
Because you said it's different here, so I was thinking about what is different, and that was
Yeah.
the only thing that I
No.
consider that could be construed as different. So I don't see where the difference lies between the practices that are here
Yeah.
and the practices that you propose.
I mean,
I think,
the
I
core
think-
difference is that we are not funded.
Well, there's a reason for that.
But I think I have a question that maybe ties into that. I'm a little bit like in a similar situation. I'm starting just a new, basically a research creation project. I'm just starting my postdoctorate. And I think it was like very interesting. You were talking about your project, for instance, with the birds, and then the research question really came really nicely from the biologists. So here we have a question that biologists don't ask, but artists ask it. And then, so I guess so my question is, how does this artistic research emerges kind of, because I think there's one instance, Sandeep perhaps used that as an example, where artists do a project and then you invite other fields and then maybe we have interdisciplinary discussion. But it's already started. But I'm really interested in this like emergence.
Yeah.
Where also in your theater piece, you had this kind of use this knowledge of psychologists. So they create certain assumptions based on their fields, and we as artists do that. So I guess my question is like, how does this artistic research emerges? How do we go about it? Like, would you invite at the very beginning, where we are still trying to define it? Do you invite everybody to the table and have a discussion, or do you go? Because that's that's interesting. I think like having that discussion
It's very
from
crucial.
the
Yeah.
beginning rather
I
than
Yeah, I know what you mean. So mostly in the past of what I have done is that it was the other way around. That you have first the personal interaction on what opportunity whatsoever, and then get the idea that there is a common interest, and then make out of that a project. So I think the personal interest in a topic and into the other person is crucial. And when you have a core of this, then you can invite other people to the table. But when you are alone, that's really difficult to make it interdisciplinary. Or you represent already different disciplines, like physics and music or so. But interdisciplinary work, I'm not talking about artistic research, interdisciplinary work in all kinds of disciplines work like that. So you meet at a conference, listening to a talk where someone presents some weird stuff, and you say, "Oh, I have been thinking about that already, and could we meet at some point?" and then there comes a project out of it. That is how the bird started.
Starts emerging from that dialogue, from that conversation.
So there was this biologist, Constanze Schaaf, and she liked to collaborate with musicians because she said, we are dealing with bird song all the time, but we never talk to a musician what is a song.
Mm-hmm.
So that was her basic idea, and then she invited me to her institute and her lab and showed me what they are working on. And then she said, oh, one question what we think of is the structure of the song and how they repeat things and so. And I then asked her, so, and when do they repeat? And then she said, oh, it's by chance. And then I asked, actually, do they have a meter? And she said, oh, I never thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a topic, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Because I, as a musician, I just throw a basic question on the table. I every time ask, so when I do a new piece, so do we have a meter? So that's crucial for musicians,
Right,
yeah?
right.
Whether we have a meter or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes a difference. And so there is something about what is very common in one discipline might be strange to another discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And to talk about common and strange things is
Mm-hmm.
very productive.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
of course. But yeah, we are not talking about the funding structures here. We are just talking emergence
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how it would work on the like a funding level of research creation. Like I'm trying to bring it to that structure where would that proposal emerge like a collaboration of 3-4 people? I think that's
Usually,
possible.
yes. I think that's what you usually observe, that people
Mhm.
meet and then they say, like you described, they
Yes.
discover something that they want to do together.
Is that different from research creation then?
No.
Okay.
Only the question, I think the difference is that artists can propose something because of the funding structure. It's usually artists that propose the research creation projects
Mhm.
to the funders.
Mhm.
It's very rare for academic scientists to propose research creation projects because they already have their funding structure, and they just
Mhm.
propose it there.
Mm.
And then usually there's no interest in engaging with artists beforehand if they have their questions. So these projects usually come about because an artist interacts with somebody from that field, like you do. You know, you meet these people,
Mhm.
and we meet these people, and then we have the question. So the question comes usually from the artist because the artist has more difficulties in finding their funding, or the artists have more difficulties in finding funding for their projects. So they are more on the lookout for these kind of projects because it opens up another stream of funding. Whereas if you're a physicist who's usually funding has funds of 5 million, 10 million, 20 million dollar projects, you
Mhm.
don't need necessarily need the $100,000 that you can get from artistic research or something like that. So that's also monetary. Once the money enters the system, you know, that's what it is. And I think the situation in especially in Germany, where there's no such system, where you can get money for artistic research as an artist,
There's no.
no such system.
Mhm.
Artistic research is funded by cultural institutions, in a sense. You know, so it works this way that Julian, you can say more about it.
Yeah,
Put
every-
together a team of
every-
interested parties.
Every project I showed to you had another financial solution. So
Exactly.
for every collaboration, we reach out for possibilities to have it funded, and mostly, some parts are funded through the scientific system, of course. Some other parts are funded through theater production funding, and every time you apply, you have to hide the other part. So
Oh, okay, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, if they find out that that is no theater, that is science, then they say, oh, go away, go to the scientific. And the other way around. So yeah, that's the difficulty we are dealing with. But yeah.
At the end, it's just.
In the end, you have to find a way. But
Yeah.
what we in Germany are dreaming of is to have like a special funding for such collaborations called artistic research.
They're actually and this is actually an international collaboration between U.S., Canada, and the EU, which has to do with issues of climate and the effects. And there's a research group, and this is science-based, that is looking at doing funding where they're doing it where they want to have artists attached as researchers. So they're looking at artists as not just sort of observers, where you've had it a lot of times where they invite artists to come along on research trips. But in this case, it's where there will be actual research proposals that are put in, and that the artists who are involved as artist researchers, and actually they're stipulating it that way.
Yeah.
But this is the first time, I think, that they're actually putting it out.
What is this institution?
It's actually part of the North American Oceans and Atmosphere.
And
So
they're
NOAA,
located.
yeah, is one of the groups that's doing
Is it a U.S.? I missed it.
It's considered to be an international group because it's involved with Arctic and Antarctic.
Okay.
Research, which is
Mhm.
always international.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
I think when talking about this, the similarities and differences between what we call artistic research and what we call research creation, it's also important to distinguish what Julian is doing from what's happening in Germany, from what's happening in other parts of Europe, where people are all using the same term of artistic research.
Yeah.
Because what counts as artistic research in the German context is it's very nebulous because it doesn't exist on an institutional level in the same way that it exists in Holland or Norway. And in Holland, where I did my PhD, for example, they have much stricter and old-fashioned requirements for what counts as research at the end of the day than they do in Norway, which is pretty much exclusively practice-based, and they're suspicious of conventional research.
In Norway?
In Norway, yeah.
Okay.
So this varies a lot from country to country. Also in Scandinavia, it's different in Norway and Sweden and Finland,
Mhm.
or Denmark,
Yeah.
and it's also totally different again in England. So
Mhm.
it's like it's a very difficult thing to just pin down. Say what's artistic research in comparison to research creation.
It's very interesting. But like my specific example where I have some funding to begin with that comes from the Canadian government, but the research is located in the U.S. And the other one in Holland. So there's a comparative. And of course, along the way, I'll be trying to get more money and also kind of think it through. So it's actually really interesting, like for me, as an organization.
What is your project?
I feel like, wow, it's like crazy.
What is your project?
It's it has an environmental component, but basically I'll be creating immersive environment and performance kind of about the environment. I'm just saying that the environment affects our actions, and how do we affect the environment, our actions. So that's the basic question. But now I'm at the University of Maine, so they have scientists there. Biologists, so I'm trying to do exactly that, trying to talk with, I'm just an artist, so I wonder what you think, so, so I'm at the very beginning, so yeah.
Interesting.
So I was very curious.
I wanted to bring this question back to your own work for a second, because I really sympathize with your pluralistic vision of how all these different methods and concerns can be integrated, and not wanting to put a corral around all the ways that research and art can and are already connected. But the projects that you presented seem to have varying degrees of relevance to the theory you presented at the beginning. And for me, you know, there were some projects that, like the Birdsong project, that I think really illuminated how all these connections can come to bear on new knowledge. But there are other projects, like the last theater project about the archaeologists you were talking about, where I really didn't get it, why you would call it research. I'm not saying that it wasn't research. I'm just asking, why would you feel the need to frame it as such?
In the first place, we don't frame it officially to be research, so it's only in the repertoire of the Schauspielhaus in Zurich, so it's a theater performance.
Mm-hmm.
But based on the research, we had to undertake historical research on the biography of that person.
Mm-hmm.
But in an artistic way. That means we were not historians looking at the broader system, we were looking as theater makers on a person and on a character, so to speak. And that's another perspective that a historian wouldn't take. And so the work is both. It's a normal research, going into archives, making interviews, evaluating sources and so on. It's nearly the same, but with another focus, with the question of a grandson to his grandfather, and that is a subjective perspective that wouldn't be taken in the framework of history.
I get that completely. Yet at the same time, you're presenting it here and now under the banner of künstlerische Forschung.
Yeah.
And this also seems very similar to something that any filmmaker worth the salt would do when they're making, a biographical film, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
So, why are you presenting it as artistic research today?
Yeah. Well, I know the word process.
Because it's another example. So where's the problem with it?
There's no problem. I'm
Yeah.
asking why.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the German language, we make a difference between research and Recherche. So when we in German say Recherche, we mean go to someone else who knows the stuff. And so it's not about producing knowledge, it's about getting the knowledge from the right place to your own basket. So that's what Recherche means in German. And that is what we've done there. So there was knowledge out there in the world, we collected it and put it together in a piece.
Okay.
And that's one way of doing it, of course. And you're totally right, there are tons of filmmakers doing that way, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a way to gain knowledge out of things and to make it in an artistic way, with undertaking it in or with the artistic mode.
It still creates, in some way, new knowledge, because out of putting it in a different context, basically.
Right. That's the point. Yeah. And in that case, also the historians couldn't tell much about Hans Schleif because he was like under the radar. But in the end, he was a very powerful person, and we were astonished that he was not known to a historian so far, because he stood in the third row of the hierarchy.
You talk a lot about different levels of perception.
Yeah.
But when we get to the artistic, could you talk about the notion of making?
Yeah.
Not just standing with one foot inside and one foot out. That's perception. You
Yeah.
see it differently, but the actual making part. In Greek, the word poiesis means to make.
Yeah.
Poetry. It means making. So, can you talk about that aspect of it, actually making something rather than seeing it
Yeah.
in a special way?
Yeah. When I am to describe it that way, I would say, as a maker, I am my first observer on my own. So by making it, I'm I'm the first one to perceive it as well.
Right.
So, and being a professional artist, I understand myself, or being a director, I understand my task or my duty to be the one who points at things or to provide opportunities to experience the artistic mode. So it's not that I deliver something, but I invite people to experience it themselves. So it's making contexts, it's making frameworks to make the artistic mode possible for the others. That's what I'm providing as an artist. It's not that, I mean, it may be the difference between fine art objects and theater performances, because in a theater performance you have the presence of all people in a place, and that's why the event is the product and not what you do as a maker. And to the event, the contribution of the audience is very crucial. You can't play a play without an audience, then it's called a rehearsal, and it's totally different when you stay on the stage with an empty audience. It makes a huge difference, actually, even in totally conservative and ordinary plays, and that's how I would describe it. Yeah, our task for as being professional artists is to invite people to discover their own artistic mode.
So the making is making available.
Making available, yeah, right.
And then there's that term for humans, homo faber.
Mm-hmm.
You familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
Man, the maker,
Yeah.
tool maker, whatever.
Yeah.
Before that, there wasn't that much making going on, and then homo faber appeared.
Yeah.
I guess that's related. You think?
Yeah, perhaps. I would need another round to think about that, but yeah. Right.
So,
Okay.
a
Yeah.
little question.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the model, coming back to the model you present, that goes to the present, the presence,
Yeah.
the artistic mode, the statement, and you have publications about that, because my research has to do with that, and for instance, if I want to refer to your model, how can you have publication or
Yeah.
something about it?
Yeah.
I can find it in artistic research.
It's that one. Yeah. Yeah.
The other side of
Yeah. You
okay.
can find it there. When you go to publications, and then the other side of the
Thank you.
That's the glass of water already.
Yeah.
Is it half empty or 2/3 empty?
It's a great table.
I think it depends on how thirsty you are.
I'm reminded in this text, you have this example of. I don't want to give away the punchline, but
Okay.
I think it's pertinent to Bob's question. The text opens with a description where you go into a theater as an observer, as a visitor, and you see something happening. And I think it would be great to make,
I don't know if you want to, but to tell that story of the first
Okay.
2 paragraphs or the three paragraphs that you
Yeah.
that happened in this article, because I think it's a very good illustration. I did it with my students in several courses, and it was always very
You did,
enlightening.
actually?
Yeah, I used it a lot. I used this text a lot.
Oh, I get red.
Not in our course.
Oh, okay. I'm not that firm in the English version, so I beg your pardon that I search for the proper text. Yeah, I have it. Am I allowed to just read it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's called Prologue on the Theatre. Please imagine attending a rehearsal of a theatre production. We are sitting back in the last row, observing the preparations being made for the first run-through of a Shakespeare scene. Stage technicians assemble the scenery, actors and actresses are warming up, names are being called out across the stage, someone is practicing some excerpted sentences, and someone else is testing a new position for a monologue. But finally, all the preparations wind down and the piece begins with the first sentence. There is nothing exceptional about all this. Nearly every initial run-through of a theatre production resembles this description. But some days later, we also attend the premiere. There, we experience the very same procedure. The stage technicians assembling the scenery, actors and actresses running through positions, names being called out, and excerpts being practiced. The entire spectacle seems just like a rehearsal, and then the piece begins. Had we not visited the rehearsal, we would probably consider it self-evident that all of this is just acting. And we might be capable of believing that anyone might actually consider it real. But we did visit the rehearsal where we experienced the very same situation. At the rehearsal, we thought that the technicians were doing for real what they seemed to be doing. For us, they were preparing a rehearsal and not rehearsing their preparations. Wherein lies the distinction? Why did we not understand during the rehearsal that the preparations were actually staged? Were the technicians better during the rehearsal because it did not occur to us at the time that they were just acting out their work? Or conversely, were they not convincing enough since their actions allowed the possibility for us to misunderstand what they were really doing and take it for real? This shows that the properties of things, or as in this case, the behavior of the performers, are occasionally unable to make much of a contribution to how we see them and what we perceive them to be. The fact that we first saw the technicians as a stage crew and later as performers behaving as a stage crew was not an effect of any sort of change in their behavior, as it did not in fact change at all, but rather of a change to the way in which we perceived them. In this case, the reason underlying the change is a tiny piece of paper in our hands. What changed for us was not any content of the framework, and along with it, our mode of perception.